96, the Indy Channel. This is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. Our focus today, education and the fight at the State House getting attention around the country. It began Monday when a visibly angry Governor Pence announced he signed an executive order that the I-STEP test be shortened. And that he was hiring outside consultants to help with the process. The reason, the length of time to take the I-STEP had nearly doubled over last year. And the governor pointed blame squarely at Glenda Ritz and the Department of Education that put the test together.
There has been a disappointing lack of transparency in this process. And I can't help but feel like this is all a byproduct of the dysfunction that has existed at the State Board of Education over the past 2 years. And that, too, must be corrected.
Just 48 hours later, the governor sounded a different tone. Pence announcing Wednesday that the Department of Education would turn over all requested documents and that the department superintendent would make shortening the test a priority before the state school board. The governor even applauded the work from the department.
I'm just very grateful for the cooperation that we have garnered today to work together. And there is a real spirit in this building between our administration, the Indiana Department of Education, members of the General Assembly to work this problem, solve the problem, lessen the burden on our kids and our families, and we will get that done.
Then this on Friday, State School Superintendent Glenda Ritz announcing the department will shorten I-STEP by 3 hours for all grades, plus dropping the social studies portion of I-STEP for students in grades 5 and 7. That move does require legislative approval. We are now joined by the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Glenda Ritz. Welcome to the program. It's been quite a week in Indiana. We've heard from the governor, the Senate Pro Tem, the Speaker of the House. We've heard from you. Who's in charge of education in our state?
Well, actually, it's a shared responsibility. So legislature sets the tone and puts in the law. The governor obviously wants involvement and has involvement in policy making through the board that he appoints. And then I myself am the implementer of what the bodies say that I should be doing with the state of Indiana, and I engage in those conversations, you know, both at all those levels. So it's a shared responsibility.
Was the executive order ordering a shortened I-STEP, was that a mistake from the governor?
Well, I will tell you that it would have been easier for him to pick up the phone and just give me a call. Since we released the times of the I-STEP test, we've been listening to the field and had been reacting and giving more guidance, and we were already in conversation with CTB, getting information back, looking at the shortening of the test. So I wish he would have just called me up, because I think we could have saved some taxpayer dollars.
The governor has hired 2 consultants to look at this test. How will you be working with them in the days to come when the testing window will open here in a matter of days?
Well, we already have been working with them, and so up until the State Board of Education special meeting that I called today, we had already been in conversation with them. My department already determined that we could actually implement what it is that their suggestions were in line with CTB suggestions as well. So we are moving forward. There's a meeting actually today at 1 o'clock, and we hope to have everything in communication out to the field and working with the General Assembly. We are going to need to have the General Assembly take some action, and we have them on standby, and they say they're willing to help. So we're going to be asking them to be involved so that we can reduce the test of the time of the test.
Well, you made a decision. You made the decision to cut the test by more than 3 hours. Should you have talked to the school board members, the state school board members first before the meeting? Because on Friday there seemed to be some confusion. They thought that they were going to be discussing that. They seemed sort of perplexed that you already had a plan in place.
Well, I think that's what's expected of me. I'm in charge of making sure we're implementing the assessment. So making those decisions. We listened at the board meeting to what it is the consultants had wanted us to do. We had already had dialogue with them, and there's a sense of urgency because we have the test actually coming up soon. So I'm being proactive, making decisions, getting things done. You know, that's what leadership should do, and so that's how I'm proceeding at this time.
And when did you know that the test was going to be so long? There was some confusion as well on that issue, that the state board members knew about this months ago. Some of them say they had no idea until just a couple of days ago. I mean, when did we know that this test was going to be expanded?
So I can talk all about that. So on August 6th at a board meeting, CTB, our vendor, had come and done a presentation. We knew knew at that time we were going to be doubling the test for part 1, and then which is the writing samples and the writing pieces and the mathematic problem-solving pieces. They take the longest. They knew we were going to have to double that. They also knew we were going to go from about 45 questions on the multiple choice to about 65 questions on the multiple choice. So we already knew we were going to have a substantially increased test. And then we were not able to assign any time to questions until they're fully developed. So everybody needs to keep in mind, we actually developed this test, valid and reliability and everything that we need to put in place from the summer to the end of December and beginning of January. And we really had to have the whole test finished before you can say, now here's how many minutes it's going to take the child to do this question. Here's how many minutes we think it's going to take them to do this question. And it's a brand new test. It's much more rigorous. The kids have to do a lot more in answering the questions. They have to demonstrate their knowledge. So we did not finish putting time to the individual questions until January 23rd. And on January 26th, we released that immediately to the field, and we've been reacting to the field's questions and concerns ever since. And that's what we do.
What do you tell parents who are somewhat concerned that even though you've cut this test by 3 hours, are still saying this test is way too long? And they're concerned because, as you know, it's a high-stakes test. It impacts not only their child's knowledge of the material, but their school letter grade, the teacher's compensation. What do you tell parents who are saying, Ms. Ritz, this test is still too long?
Well, the test it's our first one. And every time you do the first test, you have to pilot questions, you have to build what we call vertical scales. We have to do some psychometric kinds of things to make sure that it's valid and reliable. So we have done that. We have it broken down into small sessions. So no child's going to sit for a long period of time taking a test. They're broken down into smaller segments of time, and we extended the time window in which the schools have to give the test. So they have about 3 weeks to give the test, and there's not 3 weeks worth of work on the test. They could probably, and the schools design their own schedule, but for instance, if they wanted to, they could give just one segment the first thing each morning. Okay, and it wouldn't even take all 3 weeks. So they'll design their own schedule that they think is good for the children, but it's broken down into small segments. And we're going to be really trying to reduce it by 3 hours and 5 minutes for all students on part 1. And that's important because that's the lengthier part of the test in terms of them having to actually write out their answers.
Linda Ritz, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back and talk about the outcome of this test and what's happening in the legislature in the weeks to come.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Come back anytime. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's now welcome in Scott Elliott, the editor of Chalkbeat Indiana, a group dedicated to covering education issues in the state, a longtime education reporter as well. Welcome to the program. Is this as chaotic as it looks to the public?
Well, it's certainly unusual to have the governor hold 2 press conferences about education in 3 days. And also, we have really seen a quick change in direction from, last week it looked like we were going to press forward with the test as it was designed. Now this week it looks like we're going to do something dramatically different. So in that sense, there's been a lot of change in a short period.
Chalkbeat covers the entire state. So what are you hearing from area superintendents who are concerned that the state, though maybe 3 hours shorter exam, still believe that the test is too long?
Yeah, this, of course, the length of ISTEP and the amount of testing in general has been a long-running issue and concern for a lot of educators, classroom teachers, superintendents, and principals. And then let's also include parents and even students who have a lot of who would prefer to do stuff other than testing, I think, overall. So striking the right balance here is something the state is always challenged with. There were just several factors that kind of came together to make it particularly difficult this time.
How do you see this issue moving forward? Because as we saw from that meeting on Friday, many of the state school board members are still not on the same page with this superintendent.
Well, I think the most interesting thing that came out today's meeting is actually quite a lot of agreement in the sense that Glenda Ritz and her team at the department appear to now be basically on board with the recommendations of the consultants that the governor hired. The most interesting thing to me was I think most of those recommendations are going to require the legislature to create a special law to allow some exceptions to things that are required of ISTEP. So that's what we'll be looking at over the next week. I wouldn't be surprised to see a week of quick legislative action.
Scott Elliott, thank you so much. I hope you'll join us again on this program. We do appreciate your time, and you can follow the great work of Scott Elliott and the rest of the staff at Chalkbeat Indiana on Twitter and on their website, a great source for tracking education stories around our state. Coming up, what is the long-term impact of the fight over the ISTEP testing? And for control of the State Board of Education, we put those questions to our political insiders next on Indianapolis This Week. Back to Indianapolis This Week. Time to bring in our insiders, Mary Beth Schneider, Laura Beck, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Happy belated Valentine's Day. Hopefully you'll show some love amongst each other, though I don't think on the topic there's going to be much love this week.
It's not quite 50 Shades of Grey, but I think we'll be all right.
He's just really starting us off right today, isn't he?
The big issue, Mary Beth, has been education.
The education and whether they've found the love. Apparently on Friday it was kind of a kumbaya moment where they all agreed that they want to fix the length of the test. Is this just for Valentine's Day or an end of the chaos?
Well, all I can say is when I saw the superintendent up here, all I can say is thank God she wasn't doing this under oath, because she would have been tried for perjury. Ooh. She was totally inconsistent when she said, well, no, I know. No,
it's my program.
Okay.
Is that not a stretch, though, to accuse
No, it is perjury? It is not a stretch because the superintendent gave misleading information when she says that the governor called her, that a lot of this could have been avoided. They met on February 2nd, a week before the news started to break about the ISTEP test problems. The governor asked her, how long is the ISTEP test going to be? The superintendent told the governor that it'll be about as long as it was in 2008, 2009, which, Mary Beth, as you recall, that's when the year we had 2 ISTEP tests. We had one in this fall, and we had another one again in the spring. Well, guess what? It was shorter than those 2 tests combined.
I'd like to say something, and I think Abdul's immediate reaction is just emblematic of the visceral hatred of Superintendent Ritz that these Republicans have for her. And I think it's so interesting because we wouldn't be having any of these conversations about education and the state of education had their guy, Tony Bennett, won. But because Tony Bennett got beat by a woman who's just a librarian, okay, we have to endure this dysfunctionality that Governor Pence has played a role in. And part of what I think that is happening here is, and his motivation for coming out this week with these press conferences, he's had a couple of really bad weeks in terms of the media and in terms of some real stumbles. And this was a way for him to try and reframe the narrative, to get out there and to push this out and to start shifting the blame onto her.
My guess, though, is
she's clearly in grasp of what she's doing.
She was in grasp of what she was doing. We wouldn't be having talking about a test as long as a bar exam.
You had a question.
The reaction, though, of the way you guys are going at it here is emblematic, though, of what we're seeing in the State House. So this wasn't a true kumbaya moment. This is going to be ongoing chaos because nothing's actually been really resolved. They may be able to agree on shortening the test,
right,
but the underlying problem is still there, right?
Well, what I think was interesting at the State Board meeting, and I caught some of it on Twitter because I'm working and living a life as well, but when the superintendent was putting forth these solutions and the State Board, they were talking to her and questioning her, Dan Ilsner made some comments that I thought were, instead of saying, hey, thanks for taking the lead on this, we appreciate it, this is a good first step, he immediately started attacking her, saying she doesn't know what she's doing, and because of Governor Pence, we have this leader, he's a leader.
No offense,
and so I feel like there's no way that they are ever going to accept her.
But why should I give you credit for solving a problem, helping solve a problem that you helped create in the first place?
But the State Board knew about this.
What should parents make of this? The other day, my wife's a kindergarten teacher. She doesn't have to give ISTEP, but all her other colleagues give ISTEP. And all those parents, the million plus that have to give a test, take a test, my goodness, when they're watching Indianapolis, they must be thinking, what is going on in the capital city?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think parents anticipated that this is what would happen. I think that a lot of other people as well, when people voted for Superintendent Ritz and she won, I think that was the message they thought they were sending to the State House. They didn't expect the position to then become voted down and then be appointed.
Should people have confidence in this test? I mean, this, I don't...
Actually, this is based on where, but actually I think they will be able to, because I do think that things are at the point now where, personal feelings aside, people may still dislike each other, but they do realize that February 25th is coming fast and furious, and so to make sure that the test is done in the right way, and the suggestions that the consultants made, splitting up some of the questions, moving some of them to next year, they all make perfect sense. And the superintendent admitted, at the State Board meeting on Friday, that hey, these are good suggestions, we want to implement them.
Well, but what I also think too, though, is that they all have a stake in this. this. Whether you disagree or agree with the superintendent, these State Board of Ed members, they have a stake in this. And so I think that people do have to come together and work on this because kids have
really
to take
have
the
much
test.
of a stake, though. Nobody really knows who's on the State Board of Education outside of the most intimate education circles or circles at the State House, and they aren't really held accountable. You hold the governor accountable and you hold Superintendent
Well, they will be held accountable when the position is appointed, when the chair of it is appointed.
Yeah.
But
the thing is also to keep in mind too here, and people like to think this is all Republicans, but it's Republicans and Democrats, because it was 2 Democrats who put down, or rather put forward the motion at Friday's meeting to put down Glenda Ritz's proposal to waive and end all accountability for a couple of years. Those weren't Republicans doing that; those were members of your party. 2 Democrats. So
you get the last word. You get the last word.
Well, I think though what we are seeing in Indiana is, as the parent of a child who's going to be taking the I-STEP in a couple of years, is that with the ed reforms, with the switch to Common Core, with going back, we're just piling reform after reform after reform, and it becomes even more complicated for teachers to teach and kids to take tests.
Happy belated Valentine's Day. I'm happy that we could show some love.
I love her to death.
I can't wait to see my look on that one.
The conversation between our insiders continues on Twitter. You see their addresses. Stay up with Mary Beth, Lara, Abdul, Dan, and Jennifer throughout the week. Coming up, making changes at the BMV after a series of overcharges costing Indiana drivers millions of dollars. We talk to the new commissioner of the embattled agency about the changes that have to be made. Welcome back to Indianapolis this week. We're joined now by new BMV Commissioner Kent Abernathy. He's the former Chief of Staff at IDEM and has degrees from West Point and the U.S. Army War College. Welcome to the program. At the first cabinet meeting, the governor said you are here at the BMV to fix problems. What are those problems, and are you ready to fix them?
Yes, yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me here, Raphael. I appreciate it. The governor, I've known the governor for a number of years, and that was his comment. He brought me here to fix it, and I think my comment was something to the effect of, yes, sir, and if I don't, I'm sure my replacement will. But the real focus is focusing on some of the operational issues you've been reading about in the news, some of the back office issues, and the reality is it's a pretty complex operation, the back office operations. The number of about 1,100 to 1,200 fees, actually, believe it or not, that we have, and also that's the focus, is to get those matched up. A lot of them don't match up. The policies, the rules, the laws don't necessarily match up. Or they're in conflict. So it's to focus on that and get the back office.
In the last 2 years, the agency has been forced to do more than $60 million in refunds for overcharges. How do you restore the public trust and confidence in a system in which almost every Hoosier has to have a business transaction with at some point in the given year?
And actually, we do about 12.5 million transactions a year. And as I said before, because of the complexity of the system, which has evolved over time, it's important to understand that it's evolved over decades. It's not something that's happened just recently, where we just identified it recently. Fortunately, we have a external audit team going on right now from BKD. They're in doing an audit. It'll be due early summer. We'll get those results. We'll take those results and we'll analyze where the issues are and identify the problems. I've also actually earlier met with Chairman Soliday of the House Road and Transportation Committee to talk to him about a way, because it's going to require some legislation probably next year, and looking at our systems across the board.
But what do you tell your customers who are saying, my goodness, here we go again, another refund, which the governor mentioned in his last press conference, $2 million. What do you tell them who are watching you this morning when it comes to trust and confidence?
Well, I think one of the things is, if you look over the last number of years, BMV itself, the front office, the governor said he wants to make the back office as good as the front office. We've been very successful in the front office. If you take a look now, we have about a 96% customer survey rating, which is incredible. I said with those 12.5 million transactions a year, we're rated in the top 10, I think 6th by DMV.com magazine. Just last week, our website was rated 3rd in the country as far as a website. So we've shown we can do it. And I can tell you, in my initial discussions with folks, I'm really excited about the energy and the positive attitude of the folks we have, a group of professionals.
Will the changes come after the audit? Will you wait for that before you make any major changes?
Well, we're continuing to look at it, and that's why some of these things is continued. Okay. So it's going to to be an ongoing operation. I think the real key point is going to be when the audit comes out. That'll really give us the roadmap as we move ahead and all, and to be able to sit down and hopefully address all the problems.
Well, Commissioner Abernathy, the door is always open. We will hope that you will come back after the audit and share with us how you will move this agency forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raphael.
For joining us on the program. We thank you for your time. When we come back, getting ready for Oscar Sunday. And behind the scenes of the movies next on Indianapolis This Week. Back to Indianapolis this week. Next week, ITW will take you to the movies as we celebrate the Oscars right here on RTV6. We'll be on location at the Children's Museum inside their fantastic new exhibit on Hollywood film and TV and show you some of the props used in some of Hollywood's biggest movies of all time. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. We'll see you next week. Have a great Sunday.